I have really strong beliefs about the nature of Frank Melrose's career and playing. That he began playing because he wanted to play a certain way, and it sort of absolutely absorbed his life. And he set out into the world at the age of 16 playing piano, and he just wanted to do whatever came along. He had absolutely no business sense. He had no sense of selling his music to anyone, no gimmicks, no commercial things. He just believed he could walk down the street and walk into a bar and start playing piano and live wherever he happened to be at the time. That was how he approached life. And the interesting thing is that his brothers, Walter and Lester, were big music publishers and record promoters and so on, and they were complete businessmen and in some ways unscrupulous businessmen, in contrast to Melrose, who was completely, just let me find a piano and play the way I want to. So it hits me the sense of what an artist is. I do have a quotation from Stanley Kunitz, a poet, which is when someone said, "What is your poetry about?" And he said, "It's spiritual testimony." And that he believed piano playing, I think, was spiritual testimony. It was his truest self. I am indebted to Ida Melrose, his daughter, for information. I did tell her that I was going to be doing this today. She was born a couple of years ahead of me, and she was 2 years old when her father died. But one little quotation from her: "Even though I was 2, when my father died, he has become an important man to me, and I'm proud to be Ida Melrose." So she spent a great portion of her life growing into finding out knowledge about her father, which she never quite knew at the time. His style was a combination of a lot of things, but everyone knows who Jelly Roll Morton was. He was the first person who ever was deeply influenced by Jelly Roll Morton. And there's more to the story than that, but I'll just say that for now. But he was also influenced by blues and ragtime, and it kind of blended together in his playing. He was a guy who tossed anything together into his playing and made it come out like absolutely inventing as he played. Even when he composed songs, if he repeated the song the next time, it wasn't the same song, or if he repeated a theme when he played, it was never the same the second time. Most of his recordings were done in 1929 and 1930, and then later on some others, but most of his piano ones that people know are from that time. I wanted to play a little, this one first record is called Whoopie Stomp, and it's the roughest sound, so I have to say that in advance. It's like not a clear recording, but it really demonstrates him. There's an incredible bounce in his playing. He just bounces into the air as you hear him play, and it's like no one else that I know of. Frank Melrose, Whoopie Stomp, number 2. named Tommy Taylor, who was a wild man, and on all the recordings he made with him, Tommy Taylor's constantly talking and yelling and encouraging him, and it goes with it. And he plays that real tom-tom style to fit with that bounce and lift that Frank Melrose had. And he goes into the final theme, and you don't have to listen to it theme by theme. He always goes into most of his songs with something like this. No matter what composition he wrote, it would start like that. And at that point, it would change into something else. And he really defines, like, embedding the world just as he's, doing it, even when he was making a recording. And on that one, he changed his theme the second time around. The first time it was 32 measures, the second time it was 16 measures. A little word about history. Probably if you study history, you know that a lot of times things happen that are important historically, but no one thought about it at the time. So that history is a reconstruction, and a lot of mistakes happen, and a lot of guesses. And I want to go through a few guesses and mistakes about Melrose. The first recording he made, he was known as Frank Melrose, which is his name. The second recording he made, he was Kansas City Frank. And this is partly because his brothers knew he sounded black. And it was a handle, and it was a way of kind of making him part of, like, the black community. By the time he made his third recording, he was known as Broadway Rastus. And that was over the top. And you can hear on the recordings he made as Broadway Rastus, the drummers yelling, "Yeah, go Broadway!" And, it was really over-the-top, racist kind of thing. But it was, like an attempt to try to get him into the maybe more popular black records. Another thing that I'd like to bring up is that there's a recording called Wailing Blues, a couple of them, and there's a Charles Melrose listed on accordion. I asked Ida, she said, going back to the 16th century, there is no Charles Melrose in the family. It was someone else. And some theory was that he played both, but I've tried it, and you can't switch from one chorus to the next playing piano and accordion. And in the 40s, Naki Parker made a record that passed as Frank Melrose. And it was really authentic sounding. I even have it on a London LP at home about Frank Melrose. And it's not Frank Melrose, it's Naki Parker. These kind of things really go on. The biggest thing is that the first discography of jazz, a recording, a listing of records, had an entry for Kansas City Frank Melrose. And the writer put in that this was a pseudonym. There was no Frank Melrose, that this was Jelly Roll Morton. That was an identification as Jelly Roll Morton. And there, even on the most recent CD that I have of Melrose, about half of the material is not Melrose, it's someone else. So history plays tricks on people because of guesses and mistakes and assumptions. Ida said that, she didn't know at one point that there were any records available of her father. She knew they'd been made, but she didn't think she could get one, and then she saw one day in a store and bought it. And then that started her to know more about what they'd done. And I am indebted to her and to John Steiner, who did research and recording in the 1940s, and also Pete Daly and Bud Jacobson, two musicians who were good friends of Melrose's, for information here. Okay, I want to play Pass the Jug. I also want to mention I did a CD for you, Richard, and me playing Melrose's songs. It's down to 2 copies left in the music room. And this is one of the really great Melrose songs. This one's much better recorded than the other one. This is Pass the Jug, and shall we hear it? if anyone was here yesterday at 9 o'clock, Marty Eggers and I did a whole bunch of these songs. It was inspiring to me. I always loved playing those things, and they have their own journey of excitement and bounce. Pass the Jug is kind of maybe his most famous of his songs. Melrose was born in Sumner, Illinois in 1907. He was the senior class vice president. He studied violin in school, but the piano was completely self-taught. And he mostly stayed in the Midwest. I'd say mostly played in Chicago, but he did travel. I guess he did play in Kansas City, St. Louis, Detroit. And there are some recordings in New York, but he was mainly a Midwest guy. The closest friends he had in music mainly were the trumpet player Pete Daly and the sax player Bud Jacobson. But he also had a great deal of interest in the black musicians and more crossover than normally would have happened at that time between white and black musicians. I know that he liked Lonnie Johnson, the guitar player, and Lee Collins, the New Orleans trumpet player, but he recorded with black musicians. Now, that was a very unusual thing to have at that time one white guy who passed enough to fit in with a black band, which he did with Johnny Dodds and his Beale Street Washboard Band. He had a band that he played with Junie Cobb, who was another wonderful trumpet player. And the kind of job that he had playing in those bands was the kind of thing that normally would have gone to people like Jimmy Blythe or Alex Hill, who were, solid band piano players. But he did appear with them. And I think it's really significant that not only was he taken for black or sold for black by his brothers, but that he actually did fit in with black musicians. By the way, his brothers have various kinds of unscrupulous qualities. Walter would sometimes write words to songs after they'd been composed, that the composer didn't have anything to do with that, and then he put his name on the copyright. It would appear on the record. And Lester, his other brother, who produced a lot of blues recordings, sometimes was considered a guy who didn't pay as much as he's supposed to for these. But it causes a lot of confusion if you look at records and you see the name Melrose on the record. It might be a song by Frank Melrose, but it might be his brother taking credit for somebody else's song. Okay, here is Frank Melrose playing in a band. It's an all-black band, Johnny Dodds Beale Street Washboard Band. He's in the background. You can hear him in the background. But right toward the end, there's a solo that pops up. So just listen for the solo, and it's very, very much in the spirit of all the rest of the musicians. Significant to me. Yeah. accordion type, written by Frank Melrose and played with Johnny and Davy Dodds and other black musicians. And he fit in just fine. And maybe a little hard to hear in the background, but he's there very solidly joining them all. His friend Bud Jacobson said he played very nice mistakes. And Pete Daly said he was daring and crazy, and that's really true. The next record I'm going to play has a really tricky run in the right hand, and it's a run that has to keep getting repeated all the time during the song. And I do hear at one point Melrose kind of screws it up. He misses a note or two, which of course raises the deepest question about music on earth. Which is more important? The perfect performance or the deepest experience, you know? And I don't know whether he could have gone back, but it came out, you know. It's not a big mistake, but I can hear it. And it's okay with me. And I was going to say, the song is Jelly Roll Stomp. And he never played any of Jelly Roll Morton's music. I mean, his actual songs. He played all of his own songs. Later on, he played more standard jazz songs, but at that time, all the songs were his own. And it was just a nod to his connection to Jelly Roll Morton. I don't know much specifically that is documented about Morton and Melrose spending time together. According to what Ida said about what her mother said, that they had gone to piano stores and tried out pianos together. Obviously, there was a connection because his brothers were doing business with Morton all the time. And his brothers were publishing Morton's music, and he was right there learning it, and learning the spirit of it, if not the songs. So here's the one, see if you can find the little mistake.
And Ray, was there an alternate take of Jelly Roll Stomp?
Yes. He actually recorded it on several different labels, too.
Yeah, okay.
It appears on, I think, I know Jeanette, there's a Jeanette recording. I'm playing the Brunswick, which I think is the better recording. And it bounces more. If you hear Melrose, he bounces. Let's play Jelly Roll Stomp. You can see why an early discographer, an early jazz historian might think that was Jelly Roll Morton, if you know anything about how Morton played. But it wasn't. It was this white guy from the suburbs of Chicago. And so he was a remarkable character that way. And when I hear him play, it always sounds like someone says, "You have 5 minutes left to live. What are you going to do?" He throws his entire life into every song as if he'll never have another chance. Can we do the cartoon comic strip? Will that work? This is courtesy of Ramona. There we go. I don't know if that's all. This is this strip that R. Crumb, R. Crumb, famous cartoonist, he did a comic strip of Frank Melrose and of his life. And I've said, Melrose was this completely absolute artist. He never did anything other than belief in his playing. He never tried to sell it to anyone. So this picture opens up with this, it's kind of a fantasy, but it's an attempt to show he's in this kind of dingy hotel room and he's got notes in his head. And there's a knock at the door, and then this kind of slick-looking musician shows up. And I'm going to read it. I can't see it very well, but I'll read it. He says, "Hello, Georgie, come on in. What's cooking?" He says, "Hi, Frank, just a friendly social call. Want a drink?" Good stuff. And he's reaching into the piano to get it. "Don't mind if I do. Say, listen, I heard you walked out on that Avon Club band. That was a pretty high-paying gig, wasn't it?" And Melrose, down lower there, says, "Yeah, but it was darn good, but I didn't get along with Max Exner. He was always throwing those society arrangements at us." The other guy says, "Too high hat for you, huh?" And so Melrose says, "How's your little 5-piece outfit making out, Georgie? You getting good jobs?" Talking it over there. "Oh, we're doing all right. Nothing to write home about. I don't know those guys." "Say, Frank, you remember that red-headed gal that singer Gladys Woods used to hang around with musicians from Minneapolis, sang with a band at Luna Park?" "Sure, what a dish. No great talent, but a nice shape." "Yeah, she's no Ruth Edding, but she's been getting ahead. See, got a name on some radio station. Anyway, look, she wants to get a combination together to back her up at the Arrowhead Inn." "Oh yeah, nice place. I played there one summer. I'm thinking of taking some of the boys and going in with her. I was wondering if you might be interested." "Yeah, except that broad can't sing." I don't know. And then he goes over to the radio down below, and he turns it on and says there's a big colored orchestra that comes over WJZY about this time every evening. It's broadcast from the Vendome Theater, which was Louis Armstrong. And those boys play hotter than hot, and then some. Let's see if I can bring them in. And the guy says, "Sure, I've heard him. Top-notch orchestra, will tell the world." And he's listening, and it's Erskine Tate's band, Louis Armstrong. "I got him. I think I got him." The guy says, "Yeah, it's Erskine Tate." We go to the next one. And then they're listening, and Melrose is saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And the other guy says, "Those crazy cannibals." And so the guy says, "Say, Frank, I got my car here. Why don't we run down to the Vendome and catch the band?" Frank says, "No, I got to meet Sig Meyer at the Three Deuces tonight. You want to come along, Georgie?" And he says, "Maybe. What's cooking?" "Well, Sig has left the Avon Club Orchestra with me, and we're looking to see if we can get a hot band going again, something like the Midway Gardens gang. You remember we played good jazz in that band?" And the guy sitting back says, "Yeah, but you're dreaming again," as usual. And Melrose really starts listening to the band again. Says, "Man, I sure wish I played in a band like that." And his friend says, "Nah, you're nuts. Those coons don't make any kind of dough." That's what it says. New York is the place to make the big money. Some of the big hotel bands are hiring jazz musicians all over the place. And Melrose says, "Yeah, if they'd only play something besides schmaltz." And he says, "Look at Ben Pollock. He's leading one of the most successful bands in New York. They're at the Park Central Hotel." And A few years ago, he was scuffling in Chicago. Melrose says, "Hey, Georgie, I'm cooking up spaghetti tonight. You want to partake?" And he says, "Count me out." That's up at the top. "I got taking my gal out to dinner. In fact, we got to get moving." And Melrose says, "Well, maybe you'll come sit in at the Three Deuces with us later. Huh, Georgie? We're going to blast the lid off the joint tonight." And Georgie, his slick friend at the door, says, "Well, listen, maybe I'll be a little late," and so on. He slams the door and leaves. And then Melrose alone is listening to the radio. The guy says, "You've been listening to Erskine Tate and his orchestra, broadcasting from the Vendome Theater. We invite one and all to come down to the Vendome for some of the best high-class entertainment in Chicago." And Melrose says, "Man, what a band." And then there's a sign-off. "This is station WJZY, Chicago, Illinois, owned and operated by," and he clicks it off. And you can see what Melrose does in the last scene. To me, that's a real telling thing, about his values, what he listened to, what he believed in. I admire the guy tremendously. And I want to thank Ramona for putting that together for me. It's not easy to project all that. And I appreciate that. Okay, it was his true self. Frank Melrose's true self, never held anything back. There was this kind of innocence and a determination to do things the right way. And playing with black musicians and being inspired by them was one of the big things in his life. So I'm going to play a little thing by Melrose from later on. It's 1936, and this is a home recording, or a private recording, of Melrose playing a song called "Boy in the Boat," which is interesting enough as a story. "Boy in the Boat" was the precursor to "Squeeze Me." It's kind of like the same thing, almost, played fast. However, there's another song called "Boy in the Boat" that doesn't have anything to do with this one. And Melrose also took the main theme of "Boy in the Boat" and stuck it into his song "Whoopie Stomp," and with a slightly different melody. So there's all these family relationships to that song. And this is Melrose a little bit later, but it's still him in a kind of a private recording of "Boy in the Boat." how he used his left hand in relation to his right hand was a completely different experience. And that's the way his mind worked. It wasn't that it was any one kind of music, like a fast run in the left hand kind of, it became the melody and the right hand was the time. And I know that if he had played that song differently, I mean, if he played it again, he wouldn't have had the same song. It would have been a different experience entirely, because Melrose constantly improvised. So it's like, what am I going to do now when I play? So the harder part of his life is the last part. He married in 1934 to Frances. They had 3 children. 2 of them died, and Ida is back in Farmer City, Illinois right now. And, you know, he had spent a lot of wandering in his life, and they were living in Hammond, Indiana, and he was playing a lot. He didn't want to wander anymore. He liked living at home and having a family. And he was having a hard time. He gave lessons for the WPA project for a while, piano lessons, and then that stopped. I heard that he gave free lessons to kids after that. And then he decided it was time to really settle down, so he went to night school to learn to be a machinist. And he had read that there were jobs available. Strange thing was my father did the same thing at the same time. Melrose was very successful at doing this, and he was really happy to have a job. And he was starting work, and he was going to make good money, steady money, could still play piano. He was 33 years old. So on Labor Day, 1941, he went to visit some friends in Chicago. And he saw Pete Daly and Bud Jacobs and his friends. He said he had to catch the last train back home. He didn't want to stay as late as they suggested he should for partying. He never made it. He was found dead. He was nowhere near where he was supposed to be going. And there isn't any absolute final story about this. They said that it looked like his throat was cut. He was found in an alley. But at the same time, one theory was he might have been hit by a car. The theory was that he had told people he had money that he had just made, and maybe they killed him. They thought he had it, but he didn't. None of that was ever settled. And I do remember, I wrote this down from Ida. She said, I do know that my mom received a check from the job my dad had contracted as a machinist. It was for $80. Mom said it was the most he had ever made. And he was determined to better our lives. Well, it's a very sad, very tragic end to Melrose's life. And that was at the age of 33. I wanted to mention, do you have time? Oops, hold still, you guys. A couple of CDs. This is probably the best overall one. I think this one is available in the Word World. That was the picture that was up there before. And it's on is this on the Black Swan label? Yeah, and this is available from Jazzology Records, and there's a whole lot of Melrose material. This I know is available if you're interested. This is another one on the Document label, which has a lot of Melrose on it. That may not be available. But this one, the most recent one, is Frank Melrose on the Delmark label, and I was guaranteed by people who know well that only about half of the material on here is Melrose. The rest of it is other people. But Bob Kessler, who put this out, was so anxious to get it going as he took people's word that it was Melrose and ended up with some mistakes. Okay. Also, I have my Melrose record too, CD that's available down there. I want to play a little of, yeah, I can. A little bit, yeah, a little bit of Wookie Stomp. Just kind of finish it off, yeah.
Give me a minute. Sorry.
Is that all right?
No problem.
I was going to play it live.
Yeah.
Are you going to play along?
Yeah, me.
Oh, yeah. Is he ready?
Me, Ray Skjelbred. I know I played it the other day, but
few minutes for questions if you'd like to take some from the audience. And Lisa and I will get the microphones to you for questions. Anybody? Ah, there's one, Lisa.
Lisa, this side.
So this is just a quick statement. I've put together an extensive collection of Melrose on my swinging piano page on Facebook. With the blessing of Ida, she has contacted me and she's really tickled by all this. So please, I benefit nothing from it other than the fact that I've had a chance to dig up all this material about Frank that's posted on YouTube and everywhere on the internet. And there's a fairly comprehensive collection of his recordings that you can find on, again, the Facebook page is called Swingin' Piano, and if you just type in Frank Melrose to the search engine, you're welcome to take a look.
Yeah, a lot of what has come out that wasn't there during the first stage of his life as a musician is like material that had been rejected or not issued has now been issued. And then there are a lot of private recordings that come to light, so there's far more than what anyone ever thought there was at the beginning for Frank Melrose, yeah.
Ah, here.
Are there lyrics to a lot of these tunes?
Not to any of them that I've played, but there is one that I know with lyrics, and that's a song called Bluesiana, which I didn't play. But it's a song about, when the blues have got you, there's all this kind of stuff that happens to you. But it's a song called Bluesiana, and that's one that he did record, and there is a vocalist on it. So on the recording, and it's on, I think it's on this one.
Did he write the lyrics?
Probably he did. I'm not certain, but there is a singer. It's this one here. One of these two. I don't see it right now, but it's on there, Bluesiana, and that's the only one I know that has words. It's also one of two pieces of sheet music that I know of, Louisiana and Pass the Jug. There were like little lead sheets that he wrote. It's not that he wrote formal sheet music out for anything.
Anything else that we see?
Okay.
Okay, well, thank
Wait,
you.
wait, wait,
Oh,
wait.
wait, all right, missed you.
Yeah. Since we seem to have run out of intelligent questions, totally tangential. Art Crumb, we've seen his comic book, genius. Do you have any thoughts on his band, Art Crumb and the Cheap Suit Serenaders?
Sure. Well, I mean, I sort of have thoughts about him. I know different people who have played in that band, and it's pretty down home. I think this kind of represents some Crumb's thinking, and like the same kind of thinking went into how he approached playing music. He also published, a wonderful little book of portraits of early jazz and blues artists, and it's really thoughtful and very sensitive and beautiful drawings. And I think that those kind of values that he did in his artwork about jazz musicians and blues musicians appears in his music. I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay, any others? All right, Ray, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.